I found my husband's secret will in a drawer, and he left $500,000, our entire savings, to a woman I had never met in my life. I was 7 months pregnant when I read that piece of paper, and the worst part? He wasn't even sorry. He looked me dead in the eye and told me I was overreacting. My name is Emily. I'm 32 years old. I teach third grade, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty good life. Not perfect, not a fairy tale, but good, solid. The kind of life you build slowly, brick by brick, with someone you trust. I met my husband David 7 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was funny in that dry, understated way that sneaks up on you. He ran his own small consulting firm, worked long hours, but always made time for date nights, for calling his mom every Sunday, for being the guy who remembered your coffee order. Everyone loved David. My parents loved him. My sister said he was the reliable one out of all the guys I'd ever dated. We got married 4 years ago in a small ceremony in my parents' backyard. Nothing extravagant. We were saving for a house, and we got one 2 years later, a little 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with a decent school district. Because even then, we were planning for kids. We built our savings together. Every paycheck, a chunk went into a joint account. We called it the Future Fund. I used to joke that we were the most boring couple alive because our idea of a wild Friday night was reviewing our budget spreadsheet with a glass of wine. 6 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. Our first. David cried when I told him, actual tears, the kind he never let anyone see. He started reading baby books. He painted the nursery himself, this soft sage green, because we didn't want to find out the gender yet. He'd talk to my belly at night, telling our baby about all the places we'd take her, or him, someday. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the life I wanted. That's the baseline. That's what normal looked like in my house 3 weeks ago. It started with something so small I almost didn't think twice about it. I was 7 months along, nesting like crazy, reorganizing every drawer in the house because apparently my brain decided the linen closet needed to be alphabetized. I got to David's home office, to the bottom drawer of his desk that he always kept locked. I only had the key because I found it in his gym bag while doing laundry, not snooping, just laundry, I swear. Inside, under some old tax documents, there was a manila folder labeled Estate Planning Final. My first thought was actually sweet. I thought, oh, he's been thinking about the future, about the baby. Maybe he's setting up a trust. I opened it expecting reassurance. Instead, I found a fully executed will, notarized, dated 4 months ago after we knew I was pregnant, leaving our entire savings account, the full $500,000 in the Future Fund, to a woman named Melissa Grant, not to me. Not to our unborn child. To a woman whose name I had never once heard him say. I sat on the floor of his office for probably 20 minutes just staring at the page, waiting for it to rearrange itself into something that made sense. It didn't. I read it 4 times. Melissa Grant, $500,000. My husband's signature. A notary stamp from a town 40 minutes away that I had never heard him mention visiting. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Melissa was a cousin. Maybe it was a business partner tied to some deal I didn't know about. I wanted so badly to believe there was a boring, innocent reason, because the alternative was something I wasn't ready to hold in my hands while I was carrying his child. When David got home that night, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I put the folder on the kitchen table and asked him, as calmly as I've ever asked anything in my life, who is Melissa Grant? His face didn't even have the decency to panic right away. He looked at the folder, then at me, and for a second, just a second, something flickered behind his eyes that I can only describe as annoyance. Like I'd caught him in something small, not something that shattered the entire foundation of our marriage. It's not what it looks like, he said. Which, if you've ever heard that sentence in real life, you already know it is exactly what it looks like. He claimed Melissa was an old business associate, someone who'd helped him get the consulting firm off the ground years ago, before we met. He said the will was outdated, something his lawyer drew up during a rough patch in the business when he thought he might not make it another year, and wanted to make sure someone who believed in him was taken care of. He said he forgot to update it. He said it meant nothing. I asked him why a will meaning nothing was notarized 4 months ago, after our 20-week ultrasound, after we picked out the name for the nursery. He didn't have an answer for that. He just repeated that I was misunderstanding, that I was being emotional, that pregnancy hormones were making me paranoid. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly that I let it go for a few days. I told myself I'd bring it up again once I'd calmed down, once I could think clearly. But something kept nagging at me: the date. 4 months ago. Not during some rough patch years back. 4 months ago, when I was already showing, when we'd already told both our families, when he'd already painted that nursery with his own hands. So a few days later, I brought it up again, more directly this time. I told him I wanted the will changed, immediately, no excuses. And that's when things got worse. He got defensive in a way I'd never seen from him. He accused me of digging through his private things, like I was the villain in this story for finding a document that erased me and our baby from our own savings account. He said I needed to trust him, that going through his desk was a violation, that I was making a huge deal out of old paperwork. I called his mother, not to gossip, but because she's always been someone I could talk to, someone grounded. I told her what I found. I expected her to be as shaken as I was. Instead, she sighed and said, "Emily, David's always been sentimental about people who helped him early on. You're pregnant, honey. Try not to stress yourself out over old paperwork." She actually laughed a little. Like I was a silly, worried wife instead of a woman who just found out her husband had written her and their unborn baby out of $500,000. Even my own sister, when I told her, said maybe I was reading too much into it, that men do weird things with old business contacts, that I should focus on the baby and let David handle the boring legal stuff. I felt like I was losing my mind. Everyone around me was making me feel like the problem was my reaction, not his will. David refused to change the document. He kept saying he'd get to it, that I needed to stop bringing it up at dinner, that I was obsessing. 2 weeks went by like this. 2 weeks of him promising to fix it and doing absolutely nothing. 2 weeks of me feeling smaller and crazier every single day in my own home. Then came the moment that changed everything. I had a prenatal appointment scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. David couldn't make it work, emergency, he said. I went alone, which was fine. I'd done it before. I was sitting in the waiting room when the receptionist called out a name to confirm an upcoming appointment for a patient checking in ahead of me. "Melissa Grant, we have you down for a follow-up next Thursday at 2. My stomach dropped. I told myself it had to be a coincidence. Melissa Grant isn't the rarest name in the world. But then I glanced over, and there she was, sitting 3 chairs down from me in the same waiting room, visibly pregnant. Visibly, unmistakably, further along than me. I sat there, frozen, my hands on my own belly, watching a woman carrying what I now understood, with sickening clarity, was very likely my husband's second child, conceived around the same time as ours. I didn't confront her right there. I couldn't. I just sat in that waiting room in complete silence until my name was called, went through my appointment on autopilot, and drove home shaking so hard I had to pull over twice. That night, I didn't ask David calmly. I put everything on the table: the will, the name, the waiting room. And for the first time, he didn't have a smooth answer. He went quiet. Then he said the words that I will never forget as long as I live. "It happened before I knew you were serious about keeping the baby. I didn't plan for both of you to be pregnant at the same time. Both of you." Present tense. Like this wasn't a mistake he made once, like it was ongoing, current, happening in the same months he was painting a sage green nursery and crying happy tears onto my belly. He admitted it all that night, once he realized there was nowhere left to hide. Melissa wasn't an old business associate. She was a woman he'd been seeing for over a year, someone who worked at a firm his company partnered with. The affair had started before I got pregnant, and instead of ending it, he kept it going, kept seeing her, kept a whole second relationship alive right through my pregnancy. And when she got pregnant too, he panicked and decided to protect her financially with our savings, our future fund, in case anything happened to him. He said it like it was a responsible decision, like providing for one child by robbing another was some kind of virtue. Something in me went very calm and very cold that night. I stopped crying. I stopped asking him to explain himself. I started planning. I didn't confront him publicly right away. I needed proof first. Needed to protect myself and my baby before I protected my pride. I quietly consulted a family lawyer the very next morning. I learned that marital assets, especially funds accumulated during our marriage, were protected regardless of what some outdated or fraudulent will said, especially once I could prove infidelity and financial concealment. I started gathering everything: bank statements, the notarized will, screenshots of messages I found once I finally stopped protecting his privacy and started protecting mine. I decided the confrontation wouldn't happen quietly in our kitchen where he could spin another story and his mother could call me dramatic behind closed doors. I decided it would happen in front of everyone who had told me to calm down, to trust him, to stop overreacting. We had a family dinner already planned that Saturday, both sets of parents, my sister, everyone gathered to celebrate the upcoming baby. David had no idea I'd spent the week building an airtight case instead of grieving quietly like he expected. Dinner started normally. Small talk, baby name suggestions, his mother once again gently reminding me to relax more for the baby's sake. I waited until dessert was served, until everyone was settled and comfortable, and then I set the folder on the table, the will, the screenshots. A printed photo from a prenatal office parking lot, time-stamped, showing David's car parked beside a car registered to Melissa Grant, taken the week he claimed a work emergency kept him from my appointment. The table went dead silent. I looked directly at David and said the one line I had rehearsed all week, the only sentence I actually needed. You painted our nursery with the same hands you used to sign away our baby's future while another woman was carrying your child 3 towns over. His mother's fork actually clattered onto her plate. My sister put her hand over her mouth. My own mother just stared at David like she was seeing a stranger for the first time. David tried to talk his way out again, but there was no smooth story left to tell. The evidence was sitting right there on the table between the mashed potatoes and the birthday candles nobody had lit yet. His own father, a quiet man who rarely said much, finally spoke up and said, "David, is this true?" And when David couldn't answer, that silence said everything. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood up, put my hand on my belly, and said, "I hope Melissa gets the future fund. I'll be building a new one for my child, without you." Then I left. The weeks after that were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and a lot of very awkward family phone calls. But here's where the story actually gets satisfying. Because I had proof of infidelity, financial concealment, and an attempt to divert marital assets right before the birth of our child, my lawyer made sure that will meant absolutely nothing in the divorce settlement. The house stayed with me. The full future fund, every last cent of that $500,000, was legally protected as a marital asset and split according to what I'd actually contributed and fought for, which, after everything came out, ended up being the overwhelming majority, since the court didn't look kindly on a man who'd tried to funnel joint savings to someone outside the marriage while his wife was pregnant. David lost more than money. He lost the respect of his own parents, who, once they saw the evidence laid out plainly, stopped defending him and started apologizing to me instead. He lost the version of himself everyone thought he was: the reliable one, the good husband. And when our daughter was born 2 months later, he had to fight, actually fight, through lawyers and supervised arrangements, just to be part of her life at all. Because I made sure the court understood exactly what kind of decisions he was capable of making during the most vulnerable months of my life. I raised our daughter mostly on my own that first year, in the house I kept, funded by the savings I fought to protect. And every single time I look at her, I think about how close I came to raising her on nothing, because I trusted a man who was busy signing me out of my own future. So, Reddit, was I wrong to blow up that dinner table in front of both our families instead of handling it quietly? Or did David lose the right to a quiet, dignified exit the moment he decided my baby and I weren't worth protecting? If this story made your blood boil, hit like, drop a comment telling me what you would have done differently, and share it with someone who needs to hear that walking away with your dignity intact is its own kind of winning. Come back tomorrow, I've got another one you are not going to believe.